Welcome to the Pokemon Sword and Shield Battle Academy. This is episode 4, and it focuses on how moves work inside of Pokemon. So this video is going to start off very basic and then get more advanced as we go along, hopefully making this video for everyone. And even if you've been playing Pokemon for many years, you might learn something. So this video ends up helping you out, please consider leaving a like and sharing it with your friends. But the first thing we need to talk about is the sheer amount of moves inside the game. There's almost 800 moves in Pokemon, and between all of the Pokemon and all of the moves, you're kind of free to do whatever you want inside the game. Do you just really want to punch the opponent super hard in the face? You can do that. Do you want to slow them down or disrupt them with status? Maybe even boost yourself. There's even moves out there that have a 1 in 3 chance of outright deleting an opponent. Now, the moves that a Pokemon can learn are going to be one of the most important things for determining that Pokemon's viability in competitive play. That if it has a good moveset, then it's probably going to be usable. However, we need to get even more basic than that for the start of this video, and I want to talk about stab, because I see a lot of newer players get confused when this term is thrown around, like, oh, we want to add stab to this Pokemon's moveset, or this move gets stab and does more damage. Well, stab just stands for same type attack bonus, and it gives you bonus damage if the type of the move you're using matches the Pokemon using it. So a fire type Pokemon using flamethrower, that's good to go, and it also works for dual typing. So a steel rock type Pokemon using Gyro Ball or Rock Slide is also going to get boosted damage, and it goes up by 50%. Now there's other abilities and interactions that can change this, but for the most part, if you're using a Pokemon that has a move that matches its typing, you're just going to be doing better. This also works for casual Pokemon play. If you're trying to defeat the story, don't use Earthquake on a non-ground Pokemon if you have more damage in other moves, and we're going to break down how that works throughout this video. So there's going to be 3 classifications for how moves are considered inside of Pokemon. These are the categories. There's physical, special, and status. Now there's some general rules about each category for how that move is going to work, but since there's so many moves inside of Pokemon, there will be exceptions, and that's mostly going to be noted on the move description itself. But for the most part, physical moves are going to factor in the user Pokemon's attack, and it's going to be matched up against the opponent's defense. Special moves, special attack and special defense, and status moves are mostly going to be about buffing yourself or debuffing the allies or applying indirect forms of damage to the opponent. So physical special, that's just attacking. Status, that's going to be some kind of setup or technical use of a move. And then the Pokemon themselves are usually going to be suited for an individual category. We're going to have physical attackers, special attackers, and then supportive or disruptive Pokemon. But you can find physical Pokemon using status moves, status Pokemon having some kind of offensive attribute as well, and then any possibility in between, because Pokemon moves are crazy like that. Now the biggest thing I want to talk about for this video, and I feel that this can help every single competitive battler out there, is going to be how moves interact against other moves and how damage calculation works. So let's say we have a move, Pyro Ball. Pyro Ball has a 120 base power. This is an insane amount of power, and also just kind of shows the variance in moves. Some, like Blaze Kick, have 90% accuracy, 85 power, but then we have moves like Power Ball, which are going to be 120 power, 90% accuracy. And that is what move selection is going to be based off of. However, that goes into the individual Pokemon and their movesets, which I recommend checking out my moveset guides for pretty much every existing Pokemon, and I'm working on finishing the Generation 8 decks as well. You can find that in the description down below. Also subscribe, notification bell, all that YouTube shill stuff. So, Pyro Ball, 120 power. But this is a Fire-type move being used by Fire-type Pokemon, so it gets a 50% boost, which means the power effectively becomes 180. Now, we all know about super effective hits, resisted hits, and all of that fun stuff. That was in one of the earlier episodes of the Battle Academy. To become proficient at Pokemon, one of the first things you need to memorize and understand is the type chart. So, immunities, resistances, super effective hits, and what we can see right here is that a super effective hit is 2 times the damage. So we use a move like Zen Headbutt. If Zen Headbutt hits for super effective, it's going to be dealing 160 power. So this kind of shows something that advanced players really need to understand, and that's that the super effective hit is not always the best option. That Zen Headbutt will be doing less damage super effective than Powerball neutrally, and then when we go to the actual hard numbers from a damage calculation, we can see this in action. So Machamp is a fighting type Pokemon, which is going to be weak to the psychic type move and neutral to the fire type move, but Powerball still edges out in damage. It gets even more complicated than that, because there are situations where a resisted hit can still be more powerful than a super effective hit. So if you see a fairy type Pokemon and it's close combat versus bullet punch, you might be thinking, well, close combat's resisted, bullet punch super effective, no brainer, it's going to be bullet punch being the best move always, except that's not going to be the case either. So we have bullet punch against a fairy type Pokemon, but the low base power, even being doubled, is going to be less damage than the high base power of close combat being cut in half. So there's a lot of things you need to be wary of. Just because you see a super effective matchup, or you think you have the damage advantage, you need to take into consideration everything and then figure out the individual numbers in your head. Fortunately, it's going to be pretty simple. You double and then you half, and maybe there's a 50% involved. So you can do some quick basic maths, and then the calculations will make you have the most efficient play possible. So this is going to be one of the most important things to know about Pokemon, and it also applies to same type attack boosting as well. That if you have a weaker move, even being boosted by stab, a higher base power neutral move is just going to be a better option in some situations. So let's take Wailord for example. Wailord has Heavy Slam, and Heavy Slam has some really weird interactions. That it can have up to 120 base power, and Wailord's a heavy Pokemon, so most of the Pokemon you encounter are going to have the max damage against it. Well, that's going to be the same as using Waterfall. So a same type attack boosted move is going to be the same damage as a non-same type attack boosted move. But if we're going up against a Pokemon like Vaporeon, it's going to be better to have the move that is not water absorbed, because Vaporeon gets water absorbed as an ability, Waterfall doesn't do anything, Heavy Slam is at least going to have damage, so you have to take that into consideration, which brings us into move slot syndrome, which is effectively what happens if you just don't have enough available move slots. A Pokemon can only know 4 moves, but if you're getting too much setup, if you want more type coverage, if you're trying to play for something specifically against Pokemon that you struggle with, you might run out of options and wish you had extra moves to add on to your Pokemon. And it's something that you need to be aware of. So here's a Snorlax set. We have Curse, Amnesia, Rest. Between these 3 moves, Snorlax effectively becomes unkillable, but then Body Slam becomes a problem, because if a Ghost-type Pokemon comes in, well, it's just immune, and all of this setup means nothing. So we have to give up our same type attack boosted move for something that has no immunities in the game, such as Crunch, and now we got some cool stuff. Darkest Lariat can be learned by Snorlax, and that ignores the opponent's stat changes, which is also really nice. So you have to kind of consider everything about the potential moves, about the Pokemon, and that's where I build the move sets for my Pokemon. I either look at an individual move that's really good and see the Pokemon that can use it, or I look at the individual Pokemon and see if there's anything hiding inside of its moveset. So you can go on to something like Bulbapedia, or we can go into Pokemon Showdown, and we can look for individual moves that way. So we can look up the Body Press, and then all of these Pokemon are going to get access to the Body Press. If we need to know how that Pokemon gets access to the Body Press, then we can go back to Bulbapedia and find out that way. So now I can just kind of look through and see what moves might benefit this Pokemon, what cheeky things might be hiding. We have a Curse Amnesia on the Torkoal. Torkoal is known for having a very high amount of defense. Could be usable in that way, but then again, we are looking at move slot syndrome. Eruption is a very powerful move, but also shows weird things going on. So it has potentially 150 base power with same type attack boosting, and Torkoal has the ability Drought, which further boosts its damage, but you have to be at maximum hit point. Then the lower amount of hit points you have, the less damage it deals. So there's going to be moves that interact with almost every aspect of a Pokemon, and this also goes into weather interactions. So Rain is going to boost water-type moves by 50%, and it's going to cut fire-type moves by 50% as well. When it comes to Sunny Day, the opposite happens, that we're going to have fire being boosted by 50% and then water being reduced by 50%. So weather and field conditions are going to be very important to how you build a team, and there's going to be a separate Battle Academy guide to that, but it is something that you need to be aware of. And then we can also look at terrains. For example, Electric Terrain is going to boost Electric-type moves by 30% in Generation 8. Now, it used to be 50%, now that's been lowered, but if you have a Pokemon that sets Electric Terrain, either through Dynamax ability or using the Electric Terrain move, then that is something to be aware of, and it's going to add more damage. Grass gets 30% boost, Psychic gets 30% boost in their respective terrains. That's also going to change the damage calculations for how those Pokemon are going to be playing out. And that's pretty much going to be it for the basics of how moves work inside of Pokemon. I've still got a few other things to tell you about, so don't click off this video just yet. but there's so much move diversity and so many individual move interactions that I cannot explain it all inside a video, and I can't even remember everything that you need to know about how moves work inside of Pokemon to put it into a video as well. But I wanted to give you guys the basics, I want to give you guys the foundations, that way you can know what to look for inside of a Pokemon's moveset, how some moves are affected by other moves, and then just the biggest thing about it being stab for the new players, and then how the damage interacts for the already established players and the more advanced players. But then there's still some individual things that you should know about, such as Taunt. Taunt specifically works with status moves. Status moves cannot be used by that Pokemon for the next 3 turns. So a primarily status heavy or setup heavy Pokemon is going to be completely shut down by just this one move. However, you're now giving up one move slot, and this Pokemon becomes weaker because they are bringing the Taunt. So there is a lot of give and take. Every moveset is going to have a massive advantage and a massive disadvantage and something else that it's giving up, and then other interactions with items, typings, moves, abilities. It gets pretty crazy pretty quick. And also, all of the moves interact with the Pokemon stats, which is another Pokemon Sword and Shield Battle Academy video, but one observation is that physical attributes are going to generally be more prevalent inside the game, so there's going to be more Pokemon with higher attack and defensive stats on average than when it comes to special attack and special defense, and that also interacts with moves in a very unique way. So we have a Pokemon like Rhyperior, it's a physical move, it gets access to the Earthquake. Earthquake is one of the best, most reliable moves in the game, because it's just 100 base power, 100% accuracy. You don't find this on every move without a drawback or some kind of other weird interaction or a signature move or something like that. Cinderace is very unique with the Pyro Ball, because if you want 120 base power on a fire type Pokemon, you're going to need the Flare Blitz. And Flare Blitz, while it does have that higher accuracy, causes you to take 33% of the damage that you deal. So Cinderace's Pyro Ball is a lot less risky for itself. There's still the chance to miss, but it is that damage that other Pokemon don't have. So other kind of crazy interactions. So physical Pokemon are prevalent with that Earthquake, which generally hits everything for a lot of damage. However, it fails when it comes to the elemental side. So if we look up fire moves, we have Fire Punch. Fire Punch is going to be 75 base power, and that is going to be our physical counterpart to something like Flamethrower. So Flamethrower has 90 base power. Not as much damage as the Earthquake though. So if we want to look at special moves, those are going to be in the 90 to 80 power range if we're looking for 100% accuracy, but it's going to give us more coverage on an individual Pokemon instead of just kind of having Earthquake on everything. And this is also where things kind of offset, that the higher physical attack of Pokemon on average might not equate to the same amount of damage on the lower special attack that we find on average for special sweepers or special attacking Pokemon. Therefore, that Flamethrower might edge out the damage on a specific Pokemon as opposed to the Fire Punch on another Pokemon, but then you can still find high damage, Earthquake reliability, or some kind of other physical moves that bring more punch to the table. Because if we want to get something equivalent to the Flare Blitz, we're going to have to look at Fire Blast. Fire Blast is going to be less power and less accuracy, and that's something that happens as we creep into that higher damage special, that they're going to be more gambles. Blizzard, for example, is going to have 70% accuracy. We also find that on the Thunder. We see Hydro Pump with the 85% accuracy as well, but it is going to bring more damage than the base moves, and it's going to be slightly more damage than the Earthquake. So Blizzard, 10% more damage than Earthquake, 30% less accuracy. With special attacks generally being used by lower offensive stat Pokemon, it gets weird, it gets messy, and that's also, again, why I can't explain everything to you inside of a video. But there's still a few more things I want to talk about before ending the video, so let's bring up Body Press once again. Uses defense instead of attack in damage calculation. Well, that tells you everything that you need to know about the move, which means instead of trying to prioritize the attack of the Pokemon, we are going to be going for the defense of that Pokemon. Corviknight is a really good example, because you can go Iron Defense Body Press instead of Bulk Up and another physical move. And if we want to know what Bulk Up does, because you don't do it, just kind of look up the move. Now, it's said illegal, so Rhyperior does not learn Bulk Up, but you can still look at it, just kind of see what the move itself does. Raises attack and defense by 1. Iron Defense raises defense by 2, so in moves like the Body Press, Bulk Up is going to be the lesser option if you can use Iron Defense instead. Then we have other weird things going on, so a move like Foul Play uses target's attack stat in damage calculation. So it's a 95 base power dark move, and if the target is dark type Pokemon, that doesn't matter. If you are a dark type Pokemon using Foul Play, then you get the stab boost for Foul Play, but instead of using your attack, it uses the opponent's attack. So just kind of like mentally swap the attack of the opponent, and then everything else is going to calculate the same. And then we have moves like the Psyshock. So Psyshock is going to use the target's defense, not special defense. So Psyshock is still going to use the user's special attack, but then we'll base it on defense. So the reason why you want this is because some Pokemon have a very high amount of special defense. Against Rhyperior, better to use Psychic. Against a high special defense Pokemon, which once again we can just look up, so Goodra for example, it's going to be better to use the Psyshock against Goodra, since Goodra will be taking more damage in that situation. And then we get into status move weirdness and moves that act like status moves but still have a physical or special classification. So let's bring in a classic like Gengar. Gengar gets a move known as Destiny Bond. If an opponent knocks out the user, the opponent also faints. So this is a status move that effectively deals damage to the opponent or affects their health bar. And then there's other status moves like Toxic, where you just inflict the poison condition on them. Poisoning a Pokemon doesn't count as dealing damage, but they receive damage from something like the Toxic. Now if we go into a Pokemon like Excelgor, Excelgor has something interesting known as Final Gambit. It kind of feels like it interacts like Destiny Bond. Does damage equal to the user's hit points, but the user faints. However, we can see this counts as a special move. Now, since it is a special move, it is acting as though it was a fighting move. So you cannot use Final Gambit against Ghost-type Pokemon, but you can use Destiny Bond against normal-type Pokemon, because for the most part, status moves are not going to base off of typings. We talked about this before in my type coverage video, that, you know, you can still use a normal type status move against a ghost type Pokemon, so on and so forth. But like I said at the beginning of the video, there's going to be some things that break the rules, and this is where knowledge is power inside of Pokemon. So status moves usually aren't going to care about the type interaction, but Thunder Wave, for example, is not going to affect ground type Pokemon. So ground being immune to electric comes into play for this status move in this case, even though ground type Pokemon can be paralyzed. So that's where we find other moves that kind of do the same thing. We have Glare. Glare paralyzes the target, normal type move, 100% accuracy status, so you can paralyze a ground type Pokemon through the use of Glare. And then we have moves like Endeavor. Endeavor, it's another weird one. Lowers the target's hit points to the user's hit points, but it counts as a physical move, so it cannot be used against ghost type Pokemon. And then for the last thing I want to talk about are the side effects of moves. So let's just go and pull out a random water type Pokemon that kind of makes sense for this example. Let's go with Milotic. So Milotic can learn Scald. Scald has a 30% chance to burn the target, and it can also thaw the target and it thaws the user, which is another interaction inside a Pokemon that goes into individual status conditions. Another Battle Academy video. It takes years to understand everything about Pokemon. I'm doing my best. Sorry if I keep saying it's going to be in another video, because it kind of needs to be that way. So we have an 80 base power move, 100% accuracy, 1 in 3 chance to get a beneficial effect. Well, what about the move Surf? Surf is just more power. We have 90 base power. So we have more damage, but then we don't have any other effect that's normally going to happen. Double damage on Dive. Dive is rarely used, and also moves can target one Pokemon, the user, multiple Pokemon, all Pokemon on the field. That gets into double battle interactions. Another video, stuff like that. And then we can look at something like the Hydro Pump. So here's effectively one type of move doing 3 different things with different effects. Scald is going to be lower base power with an additional effect. Surf is just going to be that 90 power, 100%, very neutral move to use. But Hydro Pump, more damage, more risk with that 80 power, or 80% accuracy. I believe I said 85% accuracy earlier on in the video. That was a mistake. Just ignore that. And yeah, so we can see the different interactions. However, for the most part, people are going to use Scald because the 1-3 chance to burn is worth way more than the extra damage that you get compared to Surf if they don't want to play that accuracy game. Burning the opponent cuts the opponent's attack, which makes the Pokemon using Scald effectively more tanky against the offensive Pokemon that is now burned. And there's also counterparts to all of these moves. You might see Discharge instead of Thunderbolt. Discharge, 30% chance paralyze, that's very powerful. And then Lava Plume, which is also going to be a 30% chance to burn for Pokemon that get access to the Water Plume. So the individual status, the individual effects, the Pokemon's move, stab, power, accuracy, additional power, other things that come into play, these all factor in how a Pokemon works and the optimal move selection for that Pokemon. You're going to see all kinds of different things in moveset guides, and then you have to make that decision for yourself. Do you want to just use the higher damage move and try to blow up an opponent's Pokemon, or do you want to play the more technical game and then go for those extra chances to activate? And then there's still moves, let's go Icy Wind, that are just going to have guaranteed effects while dealing damage. So 100% chance to lower the opponent's speed by 1. Very low on that base power, but lowering the opponent's speed is going to be really good. Icy Wind, you generally see this in doubles because you just cut the opponent's speed by 33% for free for 2 Pokemon while dealing damage. That's kind of crazy. And then with new Pokemon that we've seen, so we have Appletun. Appletun gets the Apple Acid move, and that once again has a 100% chance to apply an effect. Breaking Swipe, all kinds of other things. Pokemon be crazy. I'm tired. Hope you learned something. Hope you guys enjoy the video as well. Thank you very much for watching. Have a nice day.